Hello, everyone. It's Marie. Today we are chatting all about setting up your baby's immune system for lifelong health. So, join in. Awesome if you are joining in live, and great if you're watching the replay. So, what are we talking about? How can we do this? So when we think about birth and baby's immune systems, we tend to think about the antibodies that we pass on to baby via our breast milk. And while that is a really important part of setting up the baby's immune system, there is another thing that is equally important that we are just starting to tap the surface on, and that is seeding your baby's microbiome. Now, we are used to thinking of bacteria as something bad because there are many bacteria that make us really, really ill. But it's also really important to remember that there are bacteria that are beneficial. They control about 80%. These are the bacteria found in your gut primarily, and they are really important in terms of mood regulation. They produce the vast majority of the serotonin. It's actually produced in the gut. With the help of these beneficial bacteria, it goes up to your brain, helps you feel good and happy and all that good stuff. And it's also really important in digestion, of course, but also in immune system function. So those gut bacteria, they teach our immune system what is friend and foe. So when your baby is still inside you and inside the sac of amniotic fluid, they are almost bacteria free. Actually, it's a very neutral environment because of the way that the umbilical cord and the amniotic fluid surrounds baby. There's not a lot that's bacteria or virus wise can get through those barriers. It's created to really protect baby. But then when you're in labor and those waters open, your baby starts to be exposed to the bacteria in your vagina. Now, generally, this is a really, really good thing. Although some of you may be thinking, but whoa, what about that groupie strep? Isn't that a bad one? Can't that be in my vagina? I think lots of women have that in their vagina. And if you're thinking that, you're totally correct. So most of the bacteria in our vaginas are beneficial, helpful bacteria. But there can be some that are pathogenic that can cause illness, and groupie strep is one of them. Now, groupie strep is actually really common. About 90% of women have it in their vaginas at some point. So whether you have it or not is sort of kind of irrelevant. What matters is the amount of it. And that's what they're testing for. Because if there is a large amount of that particular bacteria, then it can get passed to baby during this process, and that could lead to baby getting really sick. So that's why we're screening for it. And so actually what I'm going to teach you right now is not only going to help you to set up your baby's immune system for lifelong health, it can also help to prevent groupie strep. All right, ready to keep listening? I love this stuff. I literally could talk about the microbiome all day. I'll try not to make this too long though. Okay, so as baby is coming down that birth canal or the birth path, they are literally like covered in your fluids. And all those bacteria are colonizing their skin. So that's a really good thing because our skin is our largest organ and it's meant to be colonized by good bacteria. Baby is also ingesting, they are swallowing those fluids. And this is helping to bring those beneficial gut bacteria into their digestive system. And I know, okay, this is maybe a little gross, but whatever, I'm going there. Okay, so a lot of women are worried that they might poop on the table during the pushing phase of labor. Here's the crazy thing. Biologically, your baby is meant to pick up some of that bacteria as they come out of your body because it's all in the same area. So I know sometimes people are like, wait, why is the system designed like this? Why is the vagina and the rectum so close together? But actually, because it's been like that for so long, it's become actually beneficial. So this is part of the bacterial microbiome that your baby is picking up. And because the vagina is so close to the rectum, there's some of that bacteria that is present in around the vaginal opening, and that is a good thing. So baby is taking these bacteria into their body. And so one of the things that you can do in pregnancy is to make sure you have a really healthy gut biome. So what can you do for that? First, if possible, we want to avoid antibiotics because antibiotics wipe out both the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. So that's why it's really important to stay healthy in all those other ways so that hopefully we can lower the chances of needing those antibiotics. Second, we can supplement our diet with healthy foods that are rich in bacterial cultures. So most traditional cultures on our planet eat fermented foods because fermented foods was a great way to store food before we had refrigerators. But the side benefit was that it actually was a symbiotic relationship with the bacteria in those fermented foods and the bacteria in our gut, and they help to support one another. So when you eat things like kefir and kimchi and pickles and sauerkraut, these are all really traditional foods from different cultures across our globe that are fermented. And when we have a lot of those fermented foods in our diet, yogurt is probably the most common in the North American diet, we're getting all those good probiotics. Now, if you're not into fermented foods, don't despair because you can bring in it with supplementation. So you can take a great probiotic. If you're interested, I can even recommend a great one. And you can even get a probiotic specifically for your vagina. Isn't that crazy? Yes, they make that. And that is going to really target the bacteria that are found in the vagina, which are a little different than the bacteria that you have in your gut. Similar, but not exactly the same. And by doing this, what you're doing in your pregnancy is you're ensuring that you have a really healthy microflora. And bacteria by nature, they are territorial. So if you have a lot of good bacteria, they will naturally keep the pathogenic bacteria in check. So what does that mean for group B strep? It means that it will lower the risk of it. So it's something that you can really proactively do during your pregnancy, and it's only going to help. Okay, so then let's get to birth. So during pregnancy, we're going to make sure that we've got a really healthy microbiome. Then during the birth, we want to have a vaginal birth if possible, because when we give birth vaginally, then baby gets all of that microbiome and it seeds it as baby is coming down and through the birth path. Now, if you need a C-section or you've had a C-section, again, don't despair, because there are always things we can do to heal and optimize and rebuild that microbiome. So for example, one emerging technique, now this is really cutting edge research, but it's pretty phenomenal. So right now, researchers were looking at this microbiome, and what they were finding was that babies who were seeded at birth with their mother's microbiome via the vaginal path, vaginal birth, what they were noticing is that there were all these health benefits. So the immune system was more trained to correctly recognize friend and foe. So a lot of autoimmune disorders and diseases, things like hay fever, allergies, help me out here. Pretty much every autoimmune disease under the sun, lupus, multiple sclerosis, a whole bunch of these terrible degenerative diseases were much, much, much lower rates when these babies were seeded with that microbiome. So that's what I mean by setting up your baby for lifelong health, because this is what is teaching our immune system. More on that actually, because there's one more step that really, really knocks this out of the park. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So when there's a C-section, baby doesn't get those, right? And instead they get colonized by the bacteria at the hospital, which is obviously something we want to avoid. So in this emerging research, what they did, because you see, they could tell if they looked at the babies after birth, they could tell just by culture of their bacterial load, which you can find in their stool, they could tell which babies had been born vaginally and which babies had been born via C-section, because they had such different bacterial cultures. Okay, so we know that already. So then what researchers did was, for C-section babies, they actually swabbed them with the mother's juices. And while you might be like, ew, I'm like, whatever. It might be gross, but if it keeps your baby's immune system like functioning better for a baby's entire life, then oh my goodness, worth it, right? Worth it. So what exactly happened? Well, in this research, what they did is they put a sterile gauze into the mother's vagina, and they left it there for a certain amount of time, about a half an hour, I believe. And then afterwards, after birth, after the C-section, they actually took that gauze and rubbed it on baby's tongue, baby's face, and then all over baby's body. So they recreated what would have happened in the vaginal birth. And guess what? Those babies, when they looked at their bacterial cultures, there was no difference. So they had the same bacterial cultures as the vaginal birth baby. So isn't it amazing? There's a way that we can actually heal this, even if we need a C-section. Now, the icing on the cake in all of this, the very final step, is breastfeeding. And why breastfeeding is really cool is that, so your baby's going to inherit a whole schwack of these microflora, right? The whole bunch of different bacteria. There are certain bacteria that are more beneficial than others. And what the breast milk does, it has this really fascinating component called oligosaccharides. I had to practice that a long time, okay? Oligosaccharides. And we couldn't figure out what they were doing in breast milk for the longest time. Not me personally, but breastfeeding researchers, because a human can't digest them. So we're like, why are moms producing oligosaccharides if baby can't digest them? Why are they there? And we finally figured out that they aren't there for the baby, they're there for the bacteria. So oligosaccharides are broken down by certain types of gut bacteria, the kind that are the very best for human health. Isn't that amazing? Like when I learned this, I was like, mind blown, because the system is so elegantly designed. And the more I learn and dig into birth and to breastfeeding and the way that nature has set this up, the more I'm amazed at how beautifully designed the system is and how much wisdom there is in it. And I think the oligosaccharides are an amazing example of that. So what happens is, basically, as you're breastfeeding your baby, you're training the bacteria, you're basically farming the good bacteria, so that the baby, of all the bacteria they inherited during the vaginal process, they are then the ones that are the best get the best kind of food, so they grow so that there are more of them. So that is how you set up your baby for, just lifelong health, the best that you can. And I know that all of us want the best for our little ones. And so I feel if I can empower you to have one more step that you can take to make that journey even better, then that's what I want. And if you're like, okay, Marie, that sounds really awesome, but right now I'm sitting here pregnant and I'm like, what do I do to avoid that C-section? Then I want to make sure that you come on Friday to my live training. I'm going to do a live training all about the 3 steps to ease pain during labor. And here's the thing, these 3 steps, not only do they ease pain, but they actually make labor work better, more effectively, easier, shorter, more comfortably. And when labor works better, the risk of C-section is greatly decreased. And so if you want to make sure that you avoid a C-section, please, please come on Friday, because you are going to learn so much in terms of what you can do to have the best births possible. So with that, I'm going to wish you a wonderful day today. I love these videos. If there are other topics that you want me to explore, please let me know. See you all next week.